저희 다음 모셔볼 분은요, 바로 솔라나의 테크 앤 프로덕트 리더를 맡고 계신 매튜 솔그님을 모셔볼 텐데요. 오늘 강연을 준비한 주제로는 Accelerating Web3 with Solana를 주제로 준비를 해 주셨다고 합니다. 자, 그럼 여러분 연사님을 큰 박수로 환영해 주십시오.
Thank you for the warm introduction. Today, accelerating Web3. I think this Busan, the blockchain, the first mover. I think that's really appropriate. It kind of represents both now is a really good time and it's still early. Yeah, so a little bit about me. I'm the head of technology at Solana Foundation, which is all about decentralization and proliferation of the ecosystem around Solana. So basically helping all of the core validator clients and the ecosystem, the businesses in the ecosystem succeed. I have a long history in tech and in games, so apologies in advance. This might be a little bit more technical and data driven than most of the talks. I'll try to talk slow and be readable. So this quote, I read it the other day, just reading through some books, and I think it's very appropriate for right now. So it's basically a sentiment that a lot of what we can hear at any given time may influence our decisions and our understanding of a situation, where if you take a deeper look and actually under the hood, there's a lot more going on than meets the eye. And we're kind of in that situation right now in blockchain. It's a very technical field at its core. It's deep technology that we build our businesses on top of, and there's a lot of noise going on. You know, which one's actually performing in this way, where business is actually happening versus what's wash trading, where is actual user activity happening, and how do we get to? Because I think everybody in this room, probably everybody in this building, want to find great use cases and have user adoption. So hopefully this talk is kind of just around that. So before I go too deep into where we're going, I'm going to start out with how Solana got to where we are today. It is a 2.5-year-old network, basically. It's still very young in and of itself. And it started out, I'm not going to go into each of these, but basically 8 core innovations are at the center of Solana's technology. And this is really important because it's not an Ethereum clone. Every single piece of Solana was built from the ground up with performance, user experience in mind. So again, I won't go through each of these, but the branded one that a lot of you have probably heard of is this proof of history, and that's what makes for a very smooth and performant leader schedule. And then you have a bunch of memory management, multi-threading, all of these things that are highly scalable and highly efficient, and they have a lot of nice properties that I'll go on through this chat. But I think the main thing to really highlight here, if you have time, is this is truly differentiated technology. And I'll get into some of the numbers around that today, so I don't just point at some slides and or some words and have you believe me. So on top of this core technology, we've started and really innovated around this idea of having online hackathons. So this is, wow, this probably does not translate very well. This says summer camp in English words. I know, it's not, wow, that's pretty garbled. But we do these online hackathons with in-person events in tandem. Actually, there's one going on right now in Lisbon, Portugal. So they're all around the world and in physical locations, and then obviously all around the world on the internet. And over the last year, since we started it, 50,000 participants, 2.5K teams, and the companies that resulted have gotten $500 million in seed funding, in US dollars, in bank accounts. So one thing I like to point out to people is while we are in a bear, the Solana ecosystem continues to build because there's so much capital that they have in their bank accounts building amazing products for people, and that speaks really well for the future. The other thing is to kind of point out here is some blockchains don't have as many numbers as this, and these are people building on Solana, not consumers. These are people that are making actual applications. So obviously many of these teams aren't just one person, like they average around 5 people. So these are very legitimate companies building very real products on top of Solana. Here's some great pictures from some of the cities just to prove that they're real. Proof of picture. Proof with picture. Okay, so where are we now? So across the ecosystem, so all these great builders building great innovative products, we have around 21 million monthly active accounts. Now, just to be clear with you, these are basically addresses. It's always hard for any ecosystem to know how many users have how many addresses, but still this is orders of magnitude above most blockchains. And yeah, so, and this comes from real user activity. I'll get into some examples later, but we have about 5 applications that have over 1 million monthly active users, and that is coming just from great user experiences. And so that's why we have great user numbers, is because there's great apps with great experiences. The other thing that's really important to note in this is that Solana's actually, we actually track our 60, 90, 180 day retention, and Solana's is orders of magnitude better than any other chain that we track, basically any popular chain. So this is a little scrunched, but why? How is Solana seeing so much more success than other blockchains? Well, it's because we can scale. When an application does really well, they don't reach congestion like they do other chains. There's been periods of congestion. I think it's probably well noted to all of you that has happened. But it has happened when Solana, the blockchain, has done more transactions per day than all other public blockchains combined. So I just highlight this. This is orders of magnitude more than entire ecosystems are able to do in any given period of time. And this is just casual day in Solana. This is 6,200 is, again, and there's a lot of talk about side chains and kind of configurable, side chains as a service. Most other chains max out at anywhere between 20 and 80 TPS. You could fit hundreds of other of those side chains just within mainnet Solana. And I think that's really important when you think about scaling your application and meeting the needs of users. Like if you really want to get to that 100 million user mark, you want to be on a chain that can scale to that users. It can sound nice to be on your isolated chain, but if your chain only maxes out at 60 TPS, then that's going to curtail your experience, which I'll kind of get into. The other really good thing is the full confirmation time. So this is user clicks on the button to buy an NFT, and then under the hood all the things happen, memory management, all the the NFT is minted, and then it gets converted back into the user's wallet. That's happening under 3 seconds. In fact, today, as we speak, it's probably even under 2 seconds. And a lot of other blockchains have block times over 2 seconds. So we're talking like Web 2 speeds here. Another really good thing, like kind of related to all those technologies that I was talking about earlier, is Solana has never had a rollback in the history of the chain. That makes it so it's very certifiable once there's a confirmed block that that transaction is finalized and the user can have their good and their asset and they're free to move it. And that's why you have these very Web 2, very snappy experiences. I can just go spend on my app and I get my thing and then I'm free to use it on some other trade or some other application. And this feels really good. It enhances the volume on chain, both in terms of marketplaces, but also just in any sort of experience. And this is just the Explorer, by the way. These are just public nodes. This is a public ping to the chain. You can actually make even more optimizations on this as you optimize your infrastructure. And the other thing to really note here is what I've shown you today is just a representation of consumer activity. I know this is, again, apologize for the technical talk. These numbers basically represent the capacity of the network. So Solana is getting to 4,000 to 6,000 transactions per day, but at maybe, I don't know, just look at these numbers, around 8% utilization. So there is a lot of room in block space, even at today's levels, that if we had, 20 more really, really popular applications on chain, there wouldn't even be congestion yet. And that's today. So it's exciting. That's why we are investing so much into, my time. I actually moved to Korea in July. We are onboarding a lot of these great games and other great Korean companies to utilize this performance and this actual differentiated technology so we can create these network effects and consumer applications that people love. Another thing that's really important to realize is that all of this is coming at $0.00016 per transaction. So I made this slide because everybody will claim sub-cent just because it sounds great, and a human, everything that sounds sub-cent is just boiled down into the same thing. But at the high end, you can really start seeing a picture that 0.01 cent is way different than 0.6 cents. It's almost an order of magnitude and a half, almost 2 orders of magnitude different. So, and this is a really good example. This is actually a real example. This is STEPN in Q2. They did around 20 million transactions. So that $120,000 that other networks would have taken in transaction fees, those users had that money just freed up to continue to spend on STEPN, the application. Wow, this is the format is off. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't going to plan on reading through all this anyway. One of the main numbers here you'll all be interested in is the second to last bullet point. So STEPN also made $122 million in profit in Q2. And a lot of this is because of differentiated revenue streams. So it's not just the NFT marketplaces, it's also the rich DeFi ecosystem on Solana. And another really interesting thing to point out here is they did this without any on-chain code. So that's the other part of this talk that I want to kind of distill for people, is that there's a lot of this talk between EVM developers versus Rust developers, and it's really hard to find Rust developers, but you actually don't need Rust developers to deploy a lot of the application on Solana. So I highlight here with Metaplex, that's how they minted their NFTs. Metaplex is a minting as a service. They used the baked-in SPL tokens to mint tokens, and then they used an application called Orca for the decentralized DEX. And they just tapped into these with Web2 APIs for free. These are free services that they can use. SPL tokens and Metaplex are free to use, other than the network fees, but as I was pointing out earlier, the network fees on Solana are quite low. So with 2 developers, they were able to ship an app that was on pace to get around $500 million in profit in 22. So this is, and this is in the middle of the bear, by the way. Q2 is very much deep in the bear market, and they're still doing that much volume. And STEPN isn't alone. I've said it a couple times, but I'm going to be very clear. This is not just, in fact, STEPN's volume isn't even in this, because STEPN uses a slightly different system than this was tracking. So this is cryptoslam.io. It's not our data. You're just feel free to go on to cryptoslam.io, and you'll see this. This is the story. The economic activity on Solana is dwarfing that of other L1s and L2s. I know that it can be hard to, there's a lot of BD picture that kind of sells a different narrative, but Solana will do more volume in a day than a lot of these chains combined. And I think maybe even said a different way, Solana is actually closer to Ethereum mainnet volume than any other L1 and L2 is close to Solana's volume. And we're really, and again, a lot of that just continues to paint this picture that on top of a great differentiated chain that can actually have this really fast turnaround of transactions, volume increases, consumers have a much better time, they have a much more ease of experience on the consumer applications. So here's more of the data. So this is all other chains, all other public blockchains that at least are tracked on different sites, and then Solana. So when I say that Solana does more transactions per day from applications than all other chains combined, it's actually not even close. So yeah, so it's about 10 million. And this is all public blockchains combined. This isn't just Ethereum or Ethereum ecosystem. This includes other L1s and L2s. So this is a representation of both performance, but also just demand on the network. There's just, there's a lot of consumer activity. So yeah, again, invite you all to open up your minds and understand that maybe things are a little bit different in the actual commerce that is going on, the actual applications that are being shipped, and it is a little bit different than maybe you would have heard over time. This is way too granular for me to go over, but this is hot off the presses just the other day, and I just put it in there in case any nerds wanted to go through the numbers of this and kind of have a source that's backing up what I'm saying, because this will include things like daily developer activity and NFT secondary marketplaces, and they back up what I'm saying. So this is an independent source. Masari is a fine research institution. I also want to give a shout out to Zengel, who's a local Korean research institution that also is a lot of this data that I'm using here today. So this isn't just coming from us. This isn't trying to be doctored or anything like that. This is just coming from public reports. Again, sorry for this small text. I just put it in there for saving for later. So this is my amazing, to prove that I'm technology leader, that I included this really, really poor chart. But basically, I just wanted to kind of highlight that Solana does this by having an active ledger where the state is very separate from the programs. What this means is, at a high level, okay, I put this in as a meme, but what this means is that a lot of the stuff, a lot of the applications that be built on Solana don't actually have to use Rust code. You can deploy your application through an API, and there are services that allow you to do this. So DeFi, so Orca, Radium, Serum, these are all DeFi applications on Solana. They all have their own SDKs where you can make your own decentralized swap between all of your tokens in your applications. You can take basis points on all of those swaps. That's part of the reason why STEPN makes so much money. And you can deploy these just with the configuration into one of these applications. On the marketplace level and the NFT level, you can have a full marketplace, have a full mint of NFTs and tokens, again, using existing on-chain tools. And if you even need more, if you have maybe an application with a live service, like a video game, for example, you can use, there's many middleware providers, and even the marketplaces themselves are providing the middleware for that connective tissue between your internal database and the database that is Solana. And again, what I've described today is a very compelling application. You have NFTs, you have fungible tokens, you have DeFi, and you can execute all of this without having to have a huge core blockchain team. You can just have your normal backend team that is able to deploy a wide range of applications. I also just want to point out that one of the main things that we're concentrating on, why we're so excited about why I literally moved to Korea, is one of the main things that we have this tech base, and we have all these great applications and tools. Next is just having the great applications, having the great consumer applications. And I worked for Riot, as I was pointing. So, I've been in the Korean ecosystem for quite some time, and this is where some great games and great builders are. And so helping them ship around the world and get worldwide distribution to anybody on the internet is a big focus for us. Because I would actually think, kind of like now that where we're going, is that in a few years, it's actually going to be easier to ship around the world on Web3 than it is going to be on Web2. Easier. So less dev time, more access to more markets, less frictions all over the world, and even your dev stack might change. I'm not going to get into all of that, but when we really talk about building out the metaverse, you really start thinking about how other people are going to help you contribute and help you make your applications more efficient. So I'm always going to just go back to some technical things. So the next up for Solana is actually just tons of innovation. So when I showed you that block space and that we're doing more transactions, or the Solana network is doing more transactions per day than all other networks combined, that is true, but we are still constantly improving the network, constantly improving performance, stability, because when you're reaching this scale, there have been some times when there have been network congestion or various things like that. So one of the major things there is, I don't even have it listed here, but there's going to be a second validator client. So if there was ever an issue with one validator client, there would be a fail-safe second validator client, which there's only one other network in the world that has that, and that's Ethereum mainnet. And so that's going to really enhance the stability of the network on top of all these great increases in performance. I think another thing to point out here, kind of boiling down these current quick stake weight quality of service and localized fee markets, is fees and the way that we do the network fees on Solana are going to stay low. All you have to do is stake to the network and you're guaranteed your compute space to operate your business. So if you run a validator or if you have a relationship with your RPC node or anything like that, you don't have to increase, there's no congestion. Even if the block space were to pop off or some other application was to take up a lot of the space on the network, you still have your capacity, your verifiable capacity that you can use on the network at any given time. And I think this is really important. Basically what I'm trying to describe here is that when you run your application, you compete, all you have to do is have enough Solana and your players stake to you with Solana, and you're good. You don't have to be competing on large mints or versus other large mints. You can run your business in a very deterministic way. That's very different than the EVM world, where you are competing against the rest of the state of the network. And that's one of the optimizations I kind of jokingly brought up earlier, why I showed you that really silly architecture graph, is because on Solana, one application is completely separate than another on completely different threads and different pieces of memory. And then these current protocol changes are making it so that those isolations make it so you can run your business while not having to deal with the congestion of some other business, even if they do a lot of transactions per day. And this is really important as you want to be both connected to the wider ecosystem. Again, I think this is a bit of a difference than the side chains as a service, where you still want the liquidity, you still want all this great ecosystem and network effects, but you don't want the congestion, and this gives you both. The other thing that's going on in the ecosystem, EVM support is coming, so that's going to be really fun. There's going to be some more announcements actually in about a week at Breakpoint. Move language, so if you, multi-language support, I don't even have this on the slide. Python is another language that actually is being put on top of the current Rust. So in the next, that is live today. So Python, Move, and EVM support. So Solana is really positioning itself as the open, highly performant, configurable chain where you can freely run your business. And then there's some other things called XNFTs. There's basically different primitives. So the Solana ecosystem is moving way faster than a lot of these other ecosystems are, and different types of businesses are being formed out of them, and different types of business models beyond just NFT royalties. And then there's other SVM compatible, so the Solana compatible, all these technology changes that I've described that makes up Solana as the Solana mainnet that we described. There still are going to be configurations. Nitro and Eclipse have already announced their implementations, so there's going to be a whole ecosystem of side chains that also run on the Solana virtual machine. So this means connected addresses and liquidity, very much like the network effects on the Ethereum ecosystem. So you're not losing out on that. And basically what this is other tech nerds like myself realizing that if they want to run a really good business and run a really good chain, the Solana virtual machine is just more performant than the alternatives. And then I have a Twitter feed. We don't really do roadmaps very well at Solana. There's a conceptual reason. The conceptual reason is anytime you release a roadmap to just Twitter or on a PR stunt. It's mostly retail that buys into that, and that's a kind of a weird place to be as an ecosystem. We don't want retail to be pumping and dumping based on announcements of announcements and things like that. We want to just keep on setting up businesses for success. And obviously, kind of the reason, the whole highlight of this talk is I think that does make it so some of the narratives around Solana get lost a little bit in a lot of the other announcement waves. But there is incredible amount of development happening on Solana. It's just out of the technical scope of this talk, but it's probable that we'll get to several 100,000 transactions per second in the next 2 years, and then in the millions in the next 5. Obviously, depending on demand. We're also trying to continually reduce costs. So the transaction costs that I pointed out earlier are already really low, and we're doing the same thing for NFT mints. So this is actually on-chain data storage. So we have a compressed format that we are rolling out. So instead of it costing 30 cents to $1 for an NFT mint, you'll get more like, I don't know, around the price of a transaction, $0.0001 for fractions of a penny. It's basically near free. The other thing that is really important to talk about is we're thinking about ecosystems level now. It's not just the chain, it's also every operating business is on top. You may have heard there's physical stores opening up that are serving Solana merch, and they're being very profitable, and a bunch of different, Helium, which is a internet network that is decentralized, is moving all of their operations onto Solana. And fitting in that narrative where you have this physical, digital, enter the Solana mobile stack, that is, mobile phones. I'm sure all of you have checked your phones at some point during this talk. How do you get mass adoption without having the most user-friendly experience on mobile? And blockchain, just as an ecosystem, has not evolved there. So that's actually what this is about. It can get really technical on the security and all these other things involved, but really it's about user experience. And so I'll get into that a little bit. So there's basically 3 main parts of the stack: the seed vault, mobile adapter, and then Solana Pay for Android. The seed vault, we actually have those in our phones today. If you use your thumbprint, or if you have an iOS, your face, those actually call down to the secure element of your phone and do cryptographic signing for you, and you don't even have to know about it. And that's what this is about. It's about allowing people to use blockchain on their phone without even knowing about it in a very secure way. They don't even have to know that they have a private key. They don't have to know anything about that. They just need to know that they have a connected wallet across all of their apps very freely. Because today what you have to do, instead of doing this, is have each of the wallets be fragmented. Either the app has to make its own wallet, which has a bunch of security issues and it's also fragmented, or you actually have to send your users off to a third-party wallet and then redirect them back. And MetaMask or Phantom Wallet, and that's not the greatest experience. So that's why we have the mobile wallet adapter, which is the second part of this, and that is basically a way to connect one wallet across all applications in a very user-friendly way. So again, the seed vault is certainly a security thing, but at the end of the day, this is all about user experience. How do you have my assets and my liquidity and all my functionality across all of my apps? And this is where the network effects really take hold, because this actually is really hard to do today in Web 2. This is one of the why blockchain reasons. You have Google sign-on, but you don't really have a way to have have 2 different applications write to the same piece of data. Google doesn't allow that. It allows you to know your user, but it doesn't allow you to collaborate. That's a really powerful thing that's happening on Solana. A lot of these apps are building on top of each other and providing, and that's kind of what I was talking about earlier with the STEPN example, where you had DeFi interacting with a consumer app all in one place. It's the same wallet across those apps. And so that's just 2 hops. Think of the network effects when you have marketplaces and DeFi and consumer community tools and game experiences and your internet network and your job. They could all be connected in one place and it's really, really secure, really good user experience, and you don't have to have Google own it. You own it. Very securely and very user-friendly. It also comes with a no-fee app store. That's just kind of icing on the cake. This is a way to kind of push the needle and really push iOS and Android to show the adoption and show the demand. And to wrap all this up, because to be in the seed vault, you actually have to do it on the hardware layer of the phone. And so we're producing a phone ourselves, but it's an open source stack. Anybody can use it, and we're in talks with some of the biggest phone manufacturers in the world, of which you've probably heard of. So the idea is to have the entire phone ecosystem, starting with Android, use this Solana mobile stack, permissionlessly for free. It's just a free stack for anybody to use so that consumers can have a great time. Yep, and that's my talk. I have an appendix, I don't know if this is going to be proliferated, but there's some like developer resources. I can't get up on a stage without mentioning that there's a lot of great developer resources if you want to contribute your application. And I just want to say thanks for your time today. This is, thanks for having me.
네, 감사합니다. 좋은 강연 해주신 매튜님께 다시 한번 큰 박수 부탁드립니다.